the king becomes a flash of lightning. Well, we know for certain that the Great Pyramid itself was a transmutation machine. It's a resurrection machine. That's what the Egyptians told us. It's an ascension device. And so here's this extraordinary photo of a lightning bolt striking the second pyramid. And it's more than just a fun photo because it points us in the direction of the nature of the light body that the ancient Egyptians told us they were transmuting into. Lightning is plasma. You have solids, liquid, gas, and there's a fourth state of matter, and that is plasma. All of us see plasma every day in the form of our sun. Our sun is in fact a big ball of gas and plasma. What they're telling us is that in our light body transformation, we change from this state of matter into a higher state of matter similar to what our sun is composed of, plasma. In fact, we're told that 99% of the universe is plasma. If you KNOW plasma, if you know plasma, you know the universe, is what we're told. If there is NO plasma, there's no universe, we're also told. So it's very important for us to speculate on or follow this line of thought that the ancient Egyptians were acutely aware of the powers of the sun and our kinship with the sun, that in fact we could in fact become solar beings. Maybe another reason why the Ark of the Millions of Years is referred to as the solar barge. So when Claire and I are with groups in Egypt, we tend to like to kind of just play with the sun. And by that I mean really are connecting with Ra or Re in an extraordinary way, and asking Re to awaken our consciousness, to send rays of light, of illumination into our being. It infuses us with great joy just to be in the motherland. Here we are on the Nile at our hotel, the Luxor Hilton in Luxor. And just to be in this light is just a moment of remembrance for so many that join us, because many of the people that come on tour with us believe that they've had past lives in Egypt, and they are retracing steps of places they have been before, and seeking to connect with the sun is one great way of doing this. It's wonderful temple scene here, tomb scene from the tomb of Ramses VI, where we see the salute to the sun, as this prayer posture is called, with the solar barge on it, with the divine beings traveling on the sun. The ancient Egyptians aren't the only ones to tell us that the divine beings are connected with the sun. Buddha came from the solar clan. Christ is called the sun god or the son of God. There's many connections to be made with the sun as a conscious entity. And the Egyptians had this really acute sense that the sun played a vital role in our ascension. In fact, they taught that the way to heaven was through the sun. This is what we see here with the lions of yesterday and tomorrow on either side of the horizon symbol, the gateway symbol, with the sun in the center, indicating that the sun is the gateway to the heavenly realm. But again, the sun is plasma. This is a state of matter that was not identified or unidentified until 1879, when William Crookes invented the Crookes tube. He called plasma radiant matter. Basically, a Crookes tube is a glass bulb that gives off fluorescent light when a high voltage current is passed through it. The nature of the Crookes tube cathode ray matter was subsequently identified by British physicist Sir J.J. Thomson in 1897, who called it plasma, or rather it was called plasma by Irving Langmuir in 1928. The cathode ray tube is something we use every day in our lives. It's the basis for television technology, your computer screen, all based on this original discovery and invention of William Crookes of the plasma tube. Now, some of you have probably anticipated where I'm going with this because you may have seen something that looks just like a Crookes tube in ancient Egypt. And that, of course, is what we find in the crypt at Dendera, the Temple of Hathor, or the Temple of Love and Joy. Famously, in the 1960s and early 70s, Eric von Daniken saw the Crookes tube, or the light bulb, as he referred to it at Dendera, and said, this is evidence of ancient alien technology, that this in fact is an early example of the use of electricity in ancient Egypt. And I think that's entirely possible, but I also think there's a bigger mystery that is alluded to here, and that's what I want to talk about with you all today. This is the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, the Temple of Love and Joy. Always one of our favorite tour stops when we're in Egypt. It's one of the most peaceful places in Egypt among many peaceful places. Built around 330 BC by the Ptolemaic kings of Macedonia, who took power in Alexandria, Egypt, and rebuilt many of these ancient Egyptian temples, including Dendera, which they built on the pad of a former temple that once existed here. In the ceiling of Dendera, in the interior, is where we see these incredible scenes of the Ptolemaic kings, these humans who have gone through this process of transmutation and attained their non-molecular light body. In the crypt is where we find these extraordinary scenes that von Daniken identified as a light bulb, but what I'm going to suggest to you now may in fact be something even more mysterious than that. There are 5 of these chambers, these crypts underneath the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. There was a statue of the goddess Hathor that was stored in here. It's a very sacred part of the temple. It's possible that because it's underneath the current level temple, that this may have been part of the original temple that was in place, the one that the Ptolemaic kings built on top of. Here I am with my back to the wall that has the scene of the so-called light bulbs looking down through the crypt. You can see it's very narrow, and it has several chambers within it. And then on the wall that I'm standing at is where we actually see these light bulb scenes, or so-called light bulb scenes. If they're not light bulbs, they're definitely plasma tubes. The symbolic correspondence is very direct. In fact, in my opinion, it's more direct than this being some kind of an incandescent light bulb. So where my thinking took me on this is that if this is a plasma tube, who are the beings that are operating this plasma tube? And what are they ultimately trying to show us? Well, here is a plasma tube, a current day depiction of a plasma tube. What we see are a bunch of positrons in blue, which are the antimatter siblings of electrons, traveling down the tube of hot ionized gas, or plasma, in orange. And what we see is the wake of those positrons as they go through the plasma. So compare that image with what we see at Dendera. Is the serpent a filament of a light bulb, or is it the wake of positrons going through a tube of hot ionized gas? In my opinion, it's a plasma tube. And this is what is being shown to us here. There are actually 3 representations of these plasma tubes at Dendera. There's one upstairs in color that I'm showing you here with these blue beings operating the plasma tubes. And there's one out back in a separate little chapel called the Isis Chapel, which talks about the birth. It's a birthing chapel or chamber of Isis. And we also see the plasma tubes on the wall of this Isis chapel. So these are the only 3 places in ancient Egypt where you will see these plasma tubes. And so they have to have some kind of powerful significance. And what I believe they're pointing us to is that the beings who are operating them are not flesh and blood beings. Look at the way they are portrayed on the wall here. They have double faces. They have double skins. That to me is a very telling clue. They're trying to tell us something about these beings who are considerably larger than this being who is kneeling underneath the plasma tube. You might describe them as giants compared to the kneeling figure who could be a human. Why did the ancient Egyptian artists, who do not make mistakes, by the way, their artistry is masterful in almost every single instance where you see it, why do they portray them with this double face? Is it because they're trying to show two people or multiple people holding or operating these plasma tubes? My opinion is that they're trying to show us that this is actually their double body, and what they're showing us is their etheric double, their ethereal body, their fog-like, luminous light body, their plasma body. Their plasma body that lives in a higher energy universe. As Robert Monroe, founder of the Monroe Institute, says, the plasma body is normally invisible to the naked eye. And in order for it to be visible, it must either reflect or radiate light. I think that what we're looking at here are plasma life forms, plasma beings, who have bioplasma bodies. That's the light body of the gods. These are the electromagnetic bodies which generate electromagnetic fields and radiate electromagnetic waves similar to the Aurora borealis of our planet, which is also plasma. When cosmic rays come from off the sun, stimulates the ionosphere and produces this extraordinary display of colored lights. They occur when the solar wind particles trapped by Earth's magnetic field collide with molecules of air in the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere, and they produce this incredibly spectacular sight of these rapidly shifting patches of color and dancing columns of light of various rainbow-colored hues. The Aurora borealis. Now, plasma is, as I said, a state of matter. Plasma is what lightning is composed of. Plasma is what our sun is composed of. So could it be possible that plasma is what the light body of these beings are also made of? Let me bring in another aspect of this story that takes us into what I feel is a confirmation that these light beings are in fact lightning-like or plasma beings. When we're looking at the Dendera tube, we're thinking A, it's a light bulb. Okay. B, it's a plasma tube. And that the being who is holding it is a plasma being. Third, what we're basically looking at, and it's most simplistic, symbolic view, is a person holding a serpent. Not only is this person holding a serpent, he appears to be lifting the serpent. You can absolutely argue that the Tet column, that resurrection pillar at the very front of the plasma tube, is lifting the serpent. There's a very powerful story involving the lifting of a serpent, and that is the story of Moses, who lifted the serpent of healing in the wilderness. He raised a bronze serpent and healed the Israelites. Symbolically speaking, Moses lifting the serpent and this being in the plasma tube at Dendera are doing exactly the same thing. They're lifting the serpent. So how could this possibly play out? Well, what happens when Moses lifts the serpent of healing in the wilderness? He manifests a seraphim, a celestial being, an extraterrestrial being, an angel. In fact, the highest order of angels, referred to as seraphim, who are called winged serpents. I told you the winged serpent was going to be a very important symbol for us. And here it is coming back into our conversation. When Moses lifts the serpent of healing in the wilderness, referred to as the Nehushtan, the serpent of brass, he manifests a winged serpent or a seraphim. In the Jewish mystical book, the Hekalat Sutardi, we learn that the seraphim, their walking is like the appearance of a lightning bolt. That means they're made of plasma. A vision of them is like a vision of a rainbow. Their faces are like a vision of a bride. Their wings are like the radiance of clouds of glory. Glory means to glow rays, to glow multicolored rays. That sounds like the auric field of the earth. That sounds to me just like the auric field of the human body. It sounds to me like we're talking about a group of beings who are made of plasma. They're lightning-like, plasma beings. The king, as the pyramids text said, becomes a flash of lightning. He becomes plasma. He becomes like these celestial beings. This is so important in my research because it carries forward into the Christian mysteries of resurrection. Jesus himself likens the secret of eternal life to Moses lifting a serpent of healing in the wilderness. And he says, as Moses lifted the serpent of healing in the wilderness, even so must the Son of Man be lifted up, so that whoever believes in him will have eternal life. Jesus is equating the secret of eternal life with Moses' lifting of the serpent in the wilderness. And I am equating Moses' lifting of the serpent of healing in the wilderness with the plasma tube at Dendera. Are we talking about an extraterrestrial science of ascension that is encoded on the temple walls in the crypt at Dendera in the story of Moses lifting the serpent of healing and ultimately manifesting a seraphim, and ultimately linking it with the resurrection mysteries of Jesus and his transmutation into a being of light? After Jesus' resurrection, he had the ability to phase back and forth from his celestial throne in a place called Sion, or Sion, which sounds like the sun, and manifest to various avatars like St. Francis of Assisi, whereupon Jesus appears as a seraph, as a winged serpent. This is all not coincidence. This is all telling us that there is a link between the Egyptian mysteries of resurrection and the transmutation of the king into a being of light or lightning, plasma, Moses lifting the serpent, and Jesus identifying the lifting of the serpent as a key to eternal life and his own manifestation as a seraph when he manifested or appeared before St. Francis of Assisi. I think that that's what we're looking at when we see scenes of, for example, Horus. I think Horus is also a seraph. Remember in the story, after Osiris's resurrection, he returns as Horus. And so when we see scenes of Horus, he's portrayed as this bird being, a bird figure. And in this particular scene here from Karnak, we actually see Horus standing in front of the resurrection pillar, the Tet pillar, that is flanked on either side with the Nehushtan, the serpent on a pole. That symbol occurs in almost every single temple in Upper Egypt. You will see the winged serpent, or excuse me, the serpent on a pole on either side of the temple gateways in the temples of Upper Egypt. Ultimately, that's the Nehushtan of Moses. That is the symbol of the seraphim angels in Judeo-Christian tradition. I think of it as the logo of this tribe of celestial beings who are here to assist us in our ascension. it originated at Saqqara, where it was a symbol for Ptah. So to me, this symbol of the serpent on a pole, the Nehushtan, is the symbol for the ascension mysteries. Now, how can we connect Horus to the seraphim? Well, we go to Dendera, where we are at, looking in the crypt. Look on the temple walls. He's portrayed as a blue bird being. On his shoulder is a patch, a sort of patch. On his shoulder is a winged serpent. That is the logo of the seraphim, the winged serpents. And that tells me that Horus possibly is part of this tribe of bird beings, angelic beings, celestial beings, who are here to assist us in our ascension. In Judeo-Christian tradition, the seraphim are portrayed as red or orange because they burn. They're called the burning ones because they burn with the love of the Creator, or they're portrayed with 6 blue wings. Blue, linking them, I believe, with plasma. And in this instance here, we see the seraphim with his toroidal-shaped body. He's spinning, super high-frequency being, with the Ophanum wheels, the red winged disc that we see below. These are the angels that the Essenes were living with, and eyewitness accounts describe them as having stream rivulets of molten fire like incandescent bronze, a radiance of many brilliant colors of exquisitely hues, gloriously mingled. Many exquisite hues, brilliant colors of exquisite hues, gloriously mingled. They're describing beings that have rainbow-like colors coming off of them. Not only are they blue, but they have these rainbow-like colors coming off them, just like the Aurora Borealis, just like plasma. But I'm very intrigued by the correspondence between these blue bird beings, these seraphim, and what we see on the temple walls of Egypt in representations of Horus, who's of course considered to be the Egyptian Christ. So maybe it's no coincidence that Christ himself is surrounded by blue seraphim as well as the reddish orange seraphim, these super high frequency beings. And when we see the gate of heaven being opened in Christian art at Last Judgment, we see an almond-shaped gateway, the eye of the needle, that's opened by the seraphim. They are the beings that open this gateway, maybe even compose the gateway itself. We see Christ on a cloud of blue seraphim. So they are directly and intimately connected with the resurrected Jesus. But the point I want to come back to here is that these beings are, in their appearance, have an appearance like lightning or plasma. They are plasma beings, or I should say, what if they are plasma beings? Are they the same beings that we see holding the plasma tubes at Dendera? Are they, in fact, celestial beings that are assisting us in our ascension? I believe that they are. And one more connection, when they describe these seraphim as having many colored bodies, radiating these glories of many different colors, these many different hues, that takes me to another research specialty of mine, the rainbow light body of Tibetan Buddhism, where they describe our body having the ability to be dissolved into rainbow colored light, leaving behind hair, toe, and fingernails. So then the body accelerates its frequency and manifests as this sort of like plasma globe of rainbow colored light. They call the rainbow light body. What is so mind-blowing about this to me is that in Tibetan Buddhism, when they show the rainbow light body, they show Padmasambhava, the Tibetan guru that we see here, with an assortment of symbols, including his resurrection stick, his golden crown. He holds his vajra at his heart, which symbolizes compassion and action to the Tibetans. And he's got this multicolored hue, this rainbow hue of radiant light coming off of his body. Let's come back to Dendera, where we see the ascended Ptolemaic king. on his wormhole-shaped resurrection boat, his Ark of the Millions of Years. He has his crown of wisdom, his lotus craft, his feathered ascension throne, his resurrection stick, and the key of life. These are exactly the same symbols that we see in the Tibetan rainbow body illustration. The lotus throne, the resurrection stick, the vajra, the crown of glory, the golden rays. This led me to speculate, or to surmise, to hypothesize really, that the Egyptian resurrection mysteries and the Tibetan resurrection mysteries are the same thing. They're coming probably from the same source, an otherworldly or extraterrestrial source. I believe that source is Ptah. Not only is there a phonetic similarity between the name Padmasambhava, who we see here on the left, who came from India to Tibet in the 8th century to teach the rainbow light body. It wasn't the first time it was taught on Earth. But his name Padma means lotus born, just like Ptah. And the similarity of their symbolism also draws this conclusion or this hypothesis that they are teaching exactly the same thing. Ptah has his resurrection stick, his rainbow-colored stairway to heaven, his light body garment. There's enough of a correspondence for me to feel very comfortable in suggesting to you, and this is an original connection that I've made, and I say that not out of ego, so that you know where this information is coming from, that the Egyptians don't say this and the Tibetans don't say this, but I'm asking you to consider that when Ptah is portrayed in this way, he's being portrayed in his rainbow light body, his plasma light body, which is the true nature of our being and ultimately the object of our ascension. So when we see Ptah over and over again with that feathered resurrection garment of many colors and his helmet of salvation, his resurrection stick, his rainbow rings or necklace of immortality, rings of gold, I am aligning that with what we see in the Tibetan rainbow body images, with the crown, the resurrection stick, the vajra, and so forth. Enough of a correspondence for us to hypothesize that there is a direct link between what the Egyptians are showing and what the Tibetans are showing. It carries over into the resurrection imagery of Osiris, in my opinion, as well, where the energy pattern of Osiris's Atef crown, his green face, symbolic of rebirth, renewal, and regeneration, all match what we see in the Tibetan rainbow light body images. I believe, as I say, that the source of both of these teachings is the same. It's coming from a cosmic source, probably Ptah originally, although the Tibetans teach that this rainbow light body teaching is taught in 13 star systems, including our own, suggesting that there's a whole network of star systems where this rainbow light body teaching is taught. Let's take this forward and look for other examples of plasma beings in ancient Egyptian temple imagery. And there are several here that are very key examples. This one was actually pointed out to me by Gary Gilligan, who notes that the image on the left depicts Amun, the Egyptian god Amun, in typical form with blue skin, yellow kilt, and red flat-top crown with tall plumes segmented into sections of blue, red, and green. He notes that a thin yellow frame separates these sacred colors, and he compares them to the Aurora Borealis, the northern lights. What Gary Gilligan has established in his research, so there were cataclysms in the ancient world. Our sky was completely different than what we experience today. The ancient Egyptians had this sky that was filled with plasma and all kinds of incredible shapes and symbols present in that plasma, that the sun was going crazy, effectively, not a scientific term, but that it was causing these extraordinary light shows in our skies. And that what he is saying is that the gods, including Amun, especially Amun, are really nothing more than a symbolic representation of intense geomagnetic storms that dominated the ancient skies. I can go along with that. I see what he's saying, but I think he's fallen short here a little bit by saying that the gods basically are just the Aurora Borealis and these geomagnetic anomalies. I think the god beings were real, that they were actually incarnate on Earth, and that in fact, they were plasma beings like the Aurora Borealis. As Gilligan points out, a moon's epithets are completely consistent with an aurora-filled sky. Mysterious of form, who raised high the sky, king of south and the north, prince of rays and beams of light, the flame which sendeth forth rays of light with mighty splendor, living flame, king of heaven, who makes light, gives free passage, secret of manifestation, sparkling of shape, marvelous God, rich in forms. Light was his coming into existence on the first occasion. So he's saying this is all a description of the Aurora Borealis. I am looking at this same scene at Karnak and saying, that's a rainbow light being. That's a celestial being, like Padmasambhava or Ptah, who is manifest as a higher frequency being who resembles most definitely the Aurora Borealis, but is actually incarnate in human form. He's a bioplasma being. J. Alfred, in his book Our Invisible Bodies, alludes to his belief or discusses a physical dense Earth that he says is gravitationally coupled to a counterpart dark matter Earth composed of low density plasma. This sister Earth was co-created or co-created with the physical dense Earth about 4.6 billion years ago from dark matter components in the embryonic solar system. Plasma life forms evolved on this counterpart Earth just like it did on the visible planet. I'm going with that as a more, well, certainly fantastic, but perhaps I think more reasonable explanation for what we're seeing here in these temple scenes. These are plasma life forms, maybe coming from a twin Earth, a plasma-like Earth, where these beings can phase back and forth from their plasma form into their physical flesh and blood form and are here to assist us in our transmutation into lightning-like or plasma-like beings so that we can then go dwell in this higher dimensional, higher frequency realm, plasma realm, where these God beings dwell. That's my theory. And that's what I'm looking at. That's how I'm reading these scenes on the temple walls when we're in Egypt, is taking this incredible work of Gary Gilligan and the other work that Robert Schoch is doing, Dr. Robert Schoch. The Thunderbolts or people are also doing work on plasma and the plasma sky. I think we've got really solid evidence that in ancient times, especially in the times of ancient Egypt, our sky was very much different than what we're experiencing today. That plasma, that the Aurora Borealis was seen in much further south or southern regions than it is presently. And that is a definite inspiration for some of these scenes. But that it's also pointing us to the essential nature of these beings. Amun, Ptah, some of these other beings are actually plasma life forms that can cross over into our physical world and are coming here in order to assist us in our ascension or return to our plasma-like form.